Greetings, everyone. The join rate has started. We're at the start time of the meeting, but we'll give a couple of minutes for people to finish connecting to Meetico. Our join rate is still pretty high. We'll wait just a couple of minutes more. All right, our join rate is slowing down. We'll get started. Everyone is encouraged to share their video. We'd like to have this be an interactive session. We're not using queuing. If you've got something that you want to ask about, just jump in and ask. Add yourself to the notes if you haven't already. Do remember that the session is being recorded and will appear on YouTube at the end of the session. The agenda is in the notes. If anyone has anything they would like to add, go ahead and bring it up. Basic agenda bash time. Not hearing any agenda bashing. We'll go ahead and start in. Under our hot topics, first thing that we'd like to discuss is the email transition that is in progress. We are moving the core services for email, post-confirm, post-fix, mailman from IETF into a virtual machine elsewhere in the cloud. The plan that Sirius has been working to is captured in the notes in a Gantt chart form. You can view that image and expand it to get see the fine print just a little bit better. The major points are that we have been warming the new addresses for a little over a week, starting on February 1st. We're currently up to half of our outbound traffic being emitted through the new addresses on the new machine. Right now, the new machine basically only has a very simple post-fix instance on it, wrapped by a piece of software called HA Proxy. So it's just all it's doing is taking mail from IETF and forwarding it. At the end of this week, over this upcoming weekend, the plan will be to shift temporarily for Sunday and possibly a piece of Monday, all of the sending to be through IETF again, while the full image of IETF as a lift and shift is placed on that new machine. Once that's done and things are stable, we'll shift back to the point where we're at whatever the traffic ratio was by the time we get to this weekend, and then continue increasing the traffic from the new addresses until it reaches 100%. We've then got a target of February 24th to switch the actual post-confirm main part of postfix and mailman services over to the new machine, including Postorius's web services. That transition will involve a short outage. Sirius is still refining what short means, but the conversations today indicate it would be within a 2-hour window, with services not necessarily being down for that full 2 hours during that window. As that's being refined, I'll work with Greg. We'll send messaging out ahead of time, or I think by the end of this week, if not, then at the first part of next week at the earliest, to let the community know that this is coming, and so that they can adjust their expectations of delayed mail around that activity. One last little glitch that I'd like to note was that while we were making some adjustments to the logging configuration on the new service, there was a short period where some email from the data tracker was just rejected. We were able to identify those and resend them with the minor glitch that the apparent date, literally the date that shows up in the message that was sent to the list, was the time stamped with the time of the retransmission, not the time of the attempt to originally send. All right. Anybody have any questions about our plan for the email services transition? Then I'll move on. We had a period at the beginning of the month where the IMAP service was unavailable to people that needed to log in again if they hadn't logged in, or if their client was a client that required them to log in periodically. The component of the IMAP service that manages successful login via data tracker credentials was hanging. We still don't have a good answer for why it was hanging. We have avoided the issue by changing the traffic that is making it to the IMAP service, and we have on our queue investigating why that hang was there, which is something we'll get to when other pressures allow us. So in the process of investigating those hangs, we noticed that there was a very large amount of traffic reaching the IMAP service that was just attempting to password crack with really stupid usernames, bots attempting to log in with the username equal to every IETF address that it's ever seen in an archive, for example, not humans addresses, but list addresses. We've put some things in place to wall that traffic away. And reject, we had already put in rules that would reject that traffic as early as possible, but we've been adding things to not let that traffic get to us in the first place. Anybody have any questions on that? I'll move on to the next thing. A great deal of our effort across January and early February has gone into making sure that we have a robust data tracker for IETF 122. Big part of that is mitigating heavy traffic loads on the data tracker, looking at the places where we have abusive traffic that matters to us, and finding ways to wall that traffic off, which we've been fairly successful using Cloudflare's managed challenge techniques, and then replacing or improving the endpoints that we have that involve expensive computation with something that causes that computation to happen offline and far less frequently. So the proceedings views, for example, are currently being recomputed on a very slow schedule and served out of essentially a cache until their next recomputation comes around. They're basically, for any meeting that is older than IETF, well, 122, the coming one, since 121's been finalized, those views are essentially static already anyhow, but we are leaving right now the opportunity for the rendering code to change. So we are also putting a great deal of effort into moving to using blob storage instead of the shared file service that causes problems at IETF 121. The code that writes to the blob stores is in development testing at this point. We expect to have that deployed into production well before we get to the draft submission deadline for 122. This initial version is writing things both to the file system as it always has been, and also writing things into blob storage. We are hoping that before we get to 122, we can also deploy some views that will serve content like the contents of drafts directly out of the blob storage. And then we will be moving from 122 and afterwards towards removing the reliance on the shared file system completely. Pausing again for questions.
Do you expect any performance impact for better or worse from that change?
I'm sorry, Jay, please repeat. It's been long enough since somebody spoke. My speaker's timed out.
Sure. Do you expect any performance impact for better or for worse from that change?
So there's a mild chance that there will be a little bit of additional delay in processing requests when we first put the change in that writes to the blob stores. We're testing that in the development instance now. We do expect that once we start serving the content that we normally read off of disk directly from the blob stores, that the apparent performance for people will increase dramatically, and the load on the origin will also decrease quite dramatically, even more dramatically. So it's one of these where there may be a small bump of worse before we start to see a lot better. Anyone else? All right. The last half of 2024, we had been managing the certificate used by the mail server, the Postorius instances, the IMAP server, and the rsync server by hand. Whenever certbot would renew it, we would manually move it into place in these other applications and manually manage the transition of the TLSA records corresponding to the cert. In December, January, Nick and I, mostly Nick, automated this process. We're going through the first production run of that automation right now. The cert was renewed yesterday. The new TLS record automatically got put in place sometime today. I think it's today, it might be tomorrow. I don't remember exactly for sure. The services will switch over to the new cert, and the old TLSA record will be removed. So we're watching that, and hopefully it all goes as planned, and in the future it just happens without any manual intervention whatsoever. I wanted to call it, go ahead.
you have monitoring set up to watch for if the Let's Encrypt roll doesn't happen properly, or the contents of the TLSA change? That's something I've run into in the past, where the certificate might get updated, but the TLSA record doesn't. So, doing something like a monitoring system check to make sure that they're always in alignment is kind of critical.
Yep. We have a lot of that in place already, but not the automated, are these aligned, checked in place. You've pointed us to code that we can use to do that in the past. It's just not in place yet. But we are getting alerts when the TLSA records change. We're getting alerts when I'm going to say when the certs change, that we're getting something that corresponds to when the certs change. So we're watching that. The monitoring part of that is a little bit more manual than we hope it will be in the long run. So. All right, as noted at the last meeting, we're working towards re-implementing the liaison management tooling in the data tracker. That is still currently at the discussing requirements level, if you would. We're capturing what changes would like to be made. Conversations in the set of issues and discussions at GitHub about this are turning over some new ideas, but we've not gotten to the point where we have started re-implementation. That's going to come behind the work that we're currently doing on making the data tracker more robust. I'm going to step out of the normal pattern here and ask if there are anything that is in the FYI section, which we normally take as read, that anyone that's been providing content like there would like to call out and speak to directly. And Kasar, I think I would like to ask you to speak to the XML to RFC release.
So on XML to RFC 3.260, there's a security issue fixed. The issue was XML to RFC have this command line option, allow local file access, and I discovered that artwork and source code source doesn't respect that. So the fix is to align all the local file access processes into a single method, and they all respect this command line option. So fallout from that is, if you are using artwork as source for artwork or source code, you need to use allow local file access to access a local file. There's a diagram on the security issue on GitHub which would explain it better. Any questions on that?
Anyone else have anything that they would like to highlight that hasn't already been called out? And the last item of business that I have is scheduling the March tools call. It is currently set on a date where several of us are going to be on airplanes already for IETF 122. I'd like to find out if people would rather skip the March meeting or move it forward a week and have it the week before we normally would. Anyone have any opinions?
I think it would be useful to have it so that we can report on the outcome of the mail migration and the other work that we're aiming to have done, the blob store stuff before 122, just so that people are comfortable that we can report on that.
Yep, it works for me. So there's a good chance we'll also end up moving the April meeting. It's occurring when we're having several retreats. So, but I can bring moving that one to the list a little bit later. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to discuss today?
Well, just to note that Robert and I and Greg and I are always wondering how to bring more people to this meeting, how to make this meeting more useful for the community, because we still have roughly a 2/3 staff to community member ratio. So if anybody is has any ideas about that, please let us know. It would be very helpful so we can think about that more.
Oh, unless someone has something else, we will see you online over the next few weeks, and we'll see you again at the beginning of March. Thank you.